Hi, Wyoming Traveler here. Today we are at Fort Kearny, Nebraska. Fort Kearny was built along the Platte River. Not much of the original fort exists today. A small portion has been created as a state park with a few reconstructed structures. Okay, we have here a progression of the fort structure. This was the fort in 1849 when it was established. Then in 1858, and you can see how it has expanded. And then in 1870, just prior to its closing. Fort Kearny was established in 1848 and then closed in 1871. Like most forts of this period, after it was closed, the land was opened up to homesteaders, and the structures were torn down and shipped off to other military installations or sold at auction to the settlers. So nothing was left. And then when the land or part of the land became a state park, efforts were made to reconstruct some of the structures that were here. Many of the early fort structures were either built of sod or cottonwood logs that were cut near the bank of the Platte River. This is a replica of inside the blacksmith shop, which was a sod structure. It has a collection of blacksmith material, as well as we can see a howitzer. We're looking at the what was the parade ground of the original fort, and we'll walk along and notice some of the marked structures that were here. This is the outline of some of the warehouses for the fort. A small structure here was the guardhouse. And then we had more warehouses and barracks. Up ahead is the fort magazine. As you can see, it was a earthen structure, or rather it was a wooden structure, and then covered in earth. This is an information plaque about the magazine, and now we'll proceed towards the magazine. Here inside they would have stored the black powder. As you can see, the structure is wood. And then along here are examples of the howitzer shells that were also stored here in the magazine. This is a display, it's sort of hard to see, of the various shots that were used in the cannons. The solid shot to the left, and then in the center is exploding shells, and then the one with all the looks like balls in it, is a canister shot. The U.S. Army used one Sharps carbines for the cavalry and then Springfield rifles for the infantry. Here is the original floor post for the magazine and the outline of the commissary warehouses. The state has put plaques up explaining things. You can't read it here. This is an example of how the fort property was taken over by homesteaders. Because here in this field is where the adjutant's office was. This field is where the commander's home was, and also other officer quarters. This was the post hospital. And along here would be additional officer quarters. One of the barracks with the attached kitchen. And then another set of barracks were along here. Another view of the fort looking towards the parade ground with barracks on the left and right. Now, Fort Kearny was not a stockaded fort, but in 1864 the situation between the Americans and the Indians was such that a stockade was built next to the fort as a protection in case of an Indian attack. The Indians, however, never did attack the fort. This view inside the stockade, as you can see, at each one of the four corners is a bastion. Little remains of the fort today, and the park is only open during the summer months. I'm about 80 miles west of Fort Kearny at the site of Fort McPherson. Today, the only thing left of Fort McPherson is the National Cemetery. This is the site of Fort McPherson. I could classify Fort McPherson as a lost and forgotten fort, or at the very least, a lost fort. Nothing remains of the fort that stood on this site. I could find no fort diagram and only one picture. Only indications that Fort McPherson existed are this marker at the site and a couple of state historical markers, one at a roadside restaurant and the other at the Lincoln County Museum. The fort site today is all farmland. The National Cemetery, named for the fort, is located a mile north of the fort site. Fort McPherson, like Fort Kearny, was built to protect travelers on the Platte River Road section of the Immigrant Trail. It served as an additional layer of protection between Fort Kearny and Julesburg, Colorado. The fort was built in 1863 at the mouth of Cottonwood Canyon by the troops using cedar logs cut in the canyon. The soldiers who built the fort nicknamed it Fort Cottonwood. The fort served as a base for several expeditions against the Cheyenne and Sioux during the Indian Wars of the 1870s. In 1880, the fort was abandoned and the land opened to homesteaders. The fort's buildings were dismantled and shipped to other posts or sold at auction. The one surviving building, that of the post headquarters, is located at the Lincoln County Museum in North Platte, Nebraska.